All right, welcome in. That is Tuesday, April 16th. I hope everyone is passed and surviving that storm that came through today. I think I saw it was like all the way from Minneapolis all the way down to Kansas City. Same storm band. So I don't know what it was like down there in Des Moines, but it got a little dicey here today, Max.
Yeah, it got a little dicey here. It was raining pretty hard and pretty windy, but luckily I worked from home, so I didn't have to go out in anything.
That's always a benefit. Hey, we are here for a reason. The regular season is finished. 82 games in the books. And of course, we are, what is this now? Year three, year two, year three of the new current format with the play-in games. Before you played 82 games, your record stood as is. You're the 8 seed, you're the 8 seed. And now they kind of jazz things up, and seeds 7 through 10 all join the play-in. And it allows for more teams to get an opportunity. I guess when I first heard this news, I was, at the time, I'm like, this is stupid. I was kind of an old head. I don't know about you. I was like, this is dumb. But it's worked out really well. You get some good matchups, and it's kind of like the first four in the NCAA tournament. Some teams can kind of use it as a spark to move on further past that. And so you have teams that get banged up. It's an opportunity for them. We'll talk about some of those teams who are getting some guys back here in a little bit. But of course, it all starts tonight with our double header. Both games, I believe, are on TNT tonight, and then I believe the games tomorrow will be on ESPN. The first game tonight, Los Angeles Lakers and the New Orleans Pelicans, and this is an interesting one because these teams finished the regular season playing each other in New Orleans, and it was the Lakers beating the crap out of them just, what was that now, 2 days ago on Sunday, and the Lakers didn't have to leave. They just stayed there, and after the games were over, it was determined that they're going to have to play each other again. So LA staying right there. That is our first game tonight. There's a history between these two teams. There's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a rivalry, but I don't think these two teams really care for each other much. And then mixing the fact that the Lakers kind of stomped all over the Pelicans in the regular season this year, I'm interested in this one. I think it's going to be probably the marquee matchup of the four games. But what are your thoughts? And this one's a pick 'em. It's pretty much you pick either one you want. The Vegas views it as a 50-50 game. So give me kind of your analysis here, Max.
Yeah, well, with the blowout you mentioned in their last game, it's actually interesting because all four of their games this year have been blowouts. The Lakers winning three of them, and the Pelicans, when they did win, they blew the Lakers out. So, yeah, definitely tough to predict based on that. And also another kind of thing that adds fuel to the fire is just the Anthony Davis aspect of it all. I don't think New Orleans has a lot of love for him in general anymore. So definitely some more intensity added there. But yeah, I guess the main factor for me and what I would use to predict the outcome when the game's kind of unpredictable between the two teams like this is the star power. So in this matchup, it'd be the top guys on each team, presumably LeBron James and Zion. And in the four matchups so far this year, Zion has kind of disappeared a bit against this specific team. Most recently, the 82nd game of the year. And then earlier in the season, that in-season tournament game where he kind of disappeared, and then everyone on the broadcasts were getting on him. So based on that, I'm kind of leaning towards Lakers, but what's your thoughts? What's your prediction?
It's just tough. Obviously, if you've talked to Ryan Stolken and me, we have a little bit of different take on how this league works. So we're kind of trying to figure out, how they're gonna do this. Are they gonna have, the heavy favorites, the Lakers, and the betting favorites? By the way, 80% of the public tonight is on the Lakers. So everyone is all over the Warriors and the Lakers tonight. We were just talking a little bit ago. It seems a little too chalky. I think there's going to be a little bit. I think it's too good to be true. So I'm kind of leaning. I think Pelicans maybe in this game in game one. Obviously, they got shellacked just 2 days ago. I think it was 30-some points at one point. I think the Lakers ended up winning by like 24, 25. It was a brutal game. And so the Pelicans, I think a lot of people are just assuming are going to roll over again. You gotta also keep in mind, I believe that they're getting Brandon Ingram back, and he missed like the last last couple of weeks, maybe month this season for sure. So he'll be back, and like you said, Zion kind of in some of these games can kind of falter down the stretch. So I think that'll be good for him. If you compare him with Ingram, he doesn't have to do a whole lot. When those two play together, they typically gel well. And there's a reason. I mean, the Pelicans a couple weeks ago were looking like they probably were going to avoid, the play-in altogether. Kind of like the Kings, kind of slipped a little bit down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaning Pelicans in this one, even though that they got smacked around 3 out of the 4 times, like you said. They did blow them out the other time, but I don't know. It's a tough one. I think with Brandon Ingram coming back, I'm leaning with the Pelicans in this one. Get the 7th seed.
That one is definitely a big factor too, because big question mark with Zion in terms of the productivity. I think that part of it is conditioning. So if Ingram can take a lot of the offensive load, and not that Zion will take any plays off, but doesn't have to be carrying that load himself, I think will help him down the stretch. Definitely in the second half of the game, assuming, unlike the first 4, this one remains close throughout.
Yeah, it's gonna be a battle for sure. And AD is kind of banged up too as well, so it's gonna be interesting to see how he plays. Of course, I mean the guy's always injured, but so that's going to be a key factor. Is how does Ingram look? How does Anthony Davis look? I think his back's been kind of causing him some problems. It's going to be tight. I just think the home crowd is going to be there. There's a Smoothie King. The Smoothie King Center is going to be rocking. I mean,
it's the goofiest arena name in sports.
It's the worst. It might be the worst name in all sports, but we love it. We love it for what it is. But it's a good stadium. I think it's going to be rocking. I think that'll play to our advantage. And possibly, as we take a look at this next game here, you could possibly say the Pelicans win, get that 7 seed, face off against the Nuggets. You could potentially get a Lakers-Warriors rematch. Obviously, we're going to talk about this one here. Let's turn to that one. That's a 9 o'clock game, also on TNT. It is the Kings locking horns with the Warriors. And this is the true you lose, you're done. You win, you keep going. The loser of this one is done. They don't get another chance since it is the 9-10 seed. For me, I think the Kings' chances really kind of swings on if De'Aaron Fox can get going. If he can get to the lane and create shots. Obviously, they're kind of play by committee team, but I think they really do run through Fox. Obviously, Sabonis is gonna, I think, contribute his. I'm not really worried about him. I think he's gonna show up and do his thing. It's kind of this question of can Fox get it going? If he can get turning on. And he is so underrated at times, and I think that is something that can play to our advantage, especially they kind of are struggling with some injuries. They got to really turn to him, I think. What do you think about this game? It also should be a good matchup.
I think it should definitely be a good matchup. These two teams almost always play it really tight down to the wire. But yeah, Fox to me is definitely the guy that this whole game hinges on, especially with Herter and Monk both being out for Sacramento. They run those split actions with those two, and the handoffs of Sabonis is kind of the basis of their offense. So when they don't have those two guys, it's so much more of the ball in Fox's hands. So he's definitely going to have control, him and Sabonis, obviously, but going to have control over that offense. So I think Fox is kind of going to have to take control at times of this game for sure. And then you mentioned Sabonis. He and Kevon Looney, like last year in the playoffs, Looney kind of had his way with Sabonis playing defense on him. But lately, the Warriors have actually been starting Trace Jackson Davis, so I'm kind of interested to see how they started out and how they want to guard Sabonis.
It's going to be interesting to see what Kerr comes up with there. I mean, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see also, too. You have the Draymond factor. Mm-hmm. I mean, last year in Game 7, you had him stomping on Sabonis. So these two don't like each other. That's what I'm most intrigued for in terms of like specific matchups, is going to see how those two kind of play off each other. Obviously, they're both great players, but then you have that factor as well. I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also, as far as matchups, how the Kings match up with Curry, because with those injuries that they have, Keon Ellis has been starting, and their defense has actually been way better since he's been starting. I think they're ninth in defensive rating in the league. So he's definitely their best guard defender. But typically previously when Ellis was out of the lineup, they would have Keegan on Curry. So I'm kind of interested how they do that. Especially these teams haven't played since January 25th, I think it was, when Keon Ellis wasn't playing. Herder and Monk were both there. Looney was starting instead of Jackson Davis. So these teams are actually very different since the last team that they actually played each other.
Yeah, it's kind of unique. I mean, if they do end up going with Jackson Davis, like you said, you kind of can push the pace a little bit more with him. Obviously, he's a guy who can get up and down the court, very athletic. That could be something that they play to their advantage. That's why I like the Warriors. Obviously, you still have Curry and Thompson, obviously their main core, but credit Steve Kerr. Like he finds guys like this. He finds little advantages like this. Trace Jackson Davis is still a young guy, but when he's athleticism like that, you can definitely use that to his advantage. They always seem to have like guys like that you can kind of just plug in certain matchups, and they kind of feed off of that too as well. It's going to be I think it's really just going to be a chess match of matchups. And then you have two great coaches. You have Steve Kerr, obviously, and then you have Mike Brown, who I think is underrated. I like him. I like what he's doing.
Coach of the year last year.
Yeah. People forget about that.
Yeah. No, I think that's why, I don't know. It's really hard for me to predict this one, but I have been leaning towards the Warriors because kind of what you said, it's about matchups, and with Fox going to be having, more of the load with the guys they have out. It's kind of like if it's a close game at the end of the game, who am I going to bet on to hit a shot or make plays to win the game? Is it going to be De'Aaron Fox or Stephen Curry? And I think most people are going to pick Stephen Curry in that debate.
Is that going to be you? Who do you think wins this one? I think the Warriors are a slight favorites, like 2-point favorites right now, 3-point favorites.
I'm hoping the Kings win it, but I'm like very, very narrowly picking the Warriors in this one.
I think that's what I'm going to go with too. And if that's if we run with that, that means we have the Pelicans as the 7, and then you have the Lakers and Warriors playing each other for that 8 spot. And I mean, that's when Adam Silver sat down and whoever was in those room at the time, they envisioned this play-in thing. This is what they had envisioned, like things like this. Like this is something that you can create, and it's going to be a battle. I mean, it's winner take all for the 8 seed. So I think that's a dream scenario as a basketball fan. It'd be cool to see that happen. I love, as a Nuggets fan, I love the Nuggets-Lakers rivalry, but I think I want to steer clear of them. I would rather take New Orleans.
Yeah.
So I hope that's what happens. Again, we'll have to see. It just seems like both favorites winning tonight is a little too chalky, so I wouldn't be surprised if there is an upset somewhere. Now, I do know you follow the Kings pretty closely. Do you know much about injuries? Can you say anything about that? Are they going to be full strength? What have you gathered from?
I do not have any insider information whatsoever.
Okay.
I just know what the public knows. So I don't have any breaking news to tell you there. But just the Herder and Monk ones that have been in the news.
And so we're going with the Pelicans to move on and the Warriors to move on. Let's do a hypothetical. Now we have the Lakers and the Warriors playing in that second and the final playing game for the 8 seed. How do you see that thing going? Should that be the case? Again, personally, just off of first glance, first thoughts, I would still probably roll with the Warriors just because of the experience. But what say you?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have experience, but I mean, the Lakers have plenty of it on their own. I mean, LeBron and AD obviously won one together in LA, but I feel like as far as last year, when these two met in the playoffs and the Lakers won, I feel it was pretty handily. They won that series last year, and a lot of it had to do with their size and the Warriors' lack of size. And Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, great shooters, great perimeter players, but at some point, when you're playing a LeBron-led team with size like that, you're going to need some, and I don't feel they really have added that since last year. Now, it's one game, and anything can happen when you have Steph Curry, but based on that, I would lean towards the Lakers. But I know you mentioned who you would rather have as a Nuggets fan. What do you think about? I've heard some analysts and pundits talk about maybe the Lakers want to lose the first game against New Orleans on purpose to avoid the Nuggets. What do you think of that strategy?
If I did hear that too. People are like, well, that's their best strategy is to lose and then try to win, and then you obviously yes you would play the Thunder, but you got to win. You got to win at all costs. I mean, you just have to win. Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to go up against defending champs. That's not ideal, but you could totally get bounced, and then the whole season's over, and then you're in a world of shit. You don't want that either.
yeah,
So whoever's suggesting that is probably just saying that to get some views, get some clicks. That's idiotic. That's dumb. If you ask any player, if you ask any coach,
right.
they will say that's never they've
Right.
never done that once. So
It also doesn't. It just doesn't sound like LeBron James to be like, I'm afraid of someone else. I'm going to lose to avoid them. It doesn't sound
that's
like something LeBron would ever want to do or admit.
that's the antithesis of him. He's even already he's already said he's like this game that we played Sunday we'll repeat it by 25. It doesn't mean anything. We got to lock back in. We
Right.
had that same mentality before that we had before we played them. So he's gonna have his guy. I mean, he's gonna have the guys locked in and ready to go. Um, they're not looking to lose this game.
Yeah.
Like you said, the whole AD back in New Orleans thing. I mean, it's gonna be kind of a contested game. They're not gonna just want to roll over. I don't see that happening.
Right.
But the pundits do love to say that though. The NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, if you have one game for your season on the line against Steph Curry, I would never want to be in that situation. Kings had that last year and he scored 50.
Right. It's when it's do or die, like you said, 50 bomb last year against the Kings. Like that's the Warriors that you're gonna get. It doesn't matter if they're the 1 seed or if they're the play-in like they are. Like when it's do or die like that, they're tough at the top of the game. So you take the win, you take the set, 4-game at least series with a chance, to win multiple games. You don't want to leave it up to one game again, like you said, against potentially Steph Curry and the Warriors. So
Yeah.
no, if you're a Lakers fan and you think that's your best bet, I still think you're wrong. I know you don't want to play the best team in the NBA. I get it. Defending champs, by the way, I understand.
Best in the NBA, huh?
Currently, as it stands, we're still the reigning champs. So
Yeah.
I say that graciously, but
Right.
you don't want to have to potentially miss the whole playoffs.
Oh, for sure.
So that's the Western Conference breakdown. I mean, I would probably roll with the Warriors. I'm not going to bet against the Warriors in any of these games, is what I'm saying. I think they're going to win tonight.
I mean, no,
if
that's
they
fair.
win tonight, I'm going to bet them again. I think that's how you got to operate with them. I think that Kings game is a little bit more tricky tonight, or excuse me, that Lakers Pelicans game tonight is a little bit more tricky. Again, we are slightly leaning with the Pelicans in that one. So that's our analysis on the West side of things. Let's take a look now at the East side. People might look at this right away and say, oh, both these games tonight are way better. I'm actually very excited about the Eastern Conference game, the first game tomorrow. So let's talk a little bit about that one. You have Philadelphia and you have Miami. Obviously, Miami was in the play-in last year. Then they go all the way to the finals. Now they're back in the play-in. Can they do it again? That's what everyone's wondering. A lot of people, it seems like, are just thinking that the Sixers are going to smack them around tomorrow. I don't know. I'm kind of obviously I'm going to wait and see. I'll make my official prediction tomorrow. But when I looked at this one, and I saw the public was already all over the 76ers, I don't know. I think that the Heat can kind of pull this one up, pull the upset off here, and get that 7 seed and get back in the playoffs again. I'm going to kind of continue the trend of picking teams that I will feel trust, that I have some trust in, to back. And I like what the Heat did last year. Seems like they're in a similar spot again this year. I don't know if they're going to go to the finals again this year, but Spoelstra and company, I think I'm going to take them over the Sixers in an upset.
Yeah, no, I mean, the history definitely warrants that. I mean, the Heat under Spoelstra have been a staple of the NBA playoffs for the last 10 years. And the Sixers under Embiid, or with Embiid, I should say, definitely have had their struggles. And he's had his injury problems in the playoffs. No, so that's definitely warranted. Plus, there's the factor of all the hard feelings Jimmy Butler has for Philadelphia with how his his relationship with them went down and the whole Tobias Harris thing. So definitely one of the probably top 5 guys in the NBA I don't want to be mad at me is Jimmy Butler, especially in the postseason. But yeah, plus I mean they have a couple of young guys. They got Jaquez and Jovic that are both getting minutes, but other than those two, I mean they've got maybe the most experienced team in the league with guys like Butler and Adebayo and Love, who've all made deep playoff runs with the Heat or with other teams. And again, with these play-in games that are just like one game, anything can happen. What leader, what guy on your team do you want to have with the game on the line? And like I said, Embiid has had some struggles in the playoffs over the last few years. And Jimmy Butler has been one of the best players in the playoffs over the last few years. So, this one is tough for me, but I think I'm leaning towards Heat too.
Hey, good minds think alike. We're kind of on the same page with all these so far. What do you think about the matchup between Embiid and Adebayo? I'm a big man guy. I like watching the big uglies down low, battering it out. And I think with these two guys, they kind of dictate the tempo. They kind of dictate the physicality. Obviously Embiid's the MVP. People think he's the better guy, but I personally think Adebayo kind of has the tools to kind of play with him. I think he's, a little bit more maybe fit, a little bit more athletic. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I think, that kind of tilt the scales in their favor a little bit as well. I don't think there's that big of a discrepancy between Embiid and Adebayo. Some people might think.
Well, yeah, definitely with Embiid coming off of the injury recently too. You don't know if he's at 100% in terms of fitness and just in terms of health in general. And yeah, Adebayo is definitely, I think he's a defensive player of the year candidate. I don't think he should win it, but I think he should be a candidate. So him, making Embiid work for everything whenever they're on the floor together is definitely a factor there. But then, yeah, the other guys around Embiid too. Like I said, I don't trust them as much as the guys around Butler, being Adebayo and guys like, even though Duncan Robinson and Caleb Martin aren't stars per se, they have that experience from last year of making a deep playoff run, and we both had great playoff runs last year compared to guys like Maxey, Harris, Buddy Hield, who hasn't even really been in a tight playoff series before.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And you kind of mentioned it. We mentioned a couple times. It's especially with guys like moving around a lot. You kind of forget about some of these past teams. You kind of forget, it's been a while now. You kind of forget about the AD going back to New Orleans thing, and then even the Jimmy Butler thing in Philadelphia. That guy's been all over the place. You kind of forget about that too. So it's always fun to see these these storylines kind of weave together. I mean, everyone's talking about the West game tonight. I truly believe that one tomorrow, the opening game, is going to be. It could potentially be one of the best, low key. So I'm looking forward to that one tomorrow to tip off the Wednesday night game. And it looks like we are both leaning slightly with the upset here and taking Philadelphia. So book that one. Give the 76ers the 7 seed, which means that, get the Heat, give the 7 seed, which means the 76ers are going to have to play again against the winner of tomorrow night's nightcap, which is kind of the funniest one of the bunch.
This is the most middle of the road teams in the last decade of basketball.
Right.
They both clinched the play-in spots like a month ago.
Yeah. There was just no drama at all. Like you said, they can completely clinched the 9 and 10 spots for the play-in, and they don't even have that great of records. They have both not good records. They both have losing records, and they still ran away with that 9 and 10 seed easily. So it's going to be funny tomorrow night, but that's what it's all about. You can't help, what the state of the Eastern Conference is in. You just got to win the games and get there. And the Bulls are kind of, they almost ended the Heat's, finals run in their tracks last year.
Right.
So this is a team, they could, claim that they're kind of the new king of the play-in in the East. They're there every year. Like you said, the Hawks are usually about 500 the past decade or so. So it's, it's not just a fight for survival. It's a fight for heart. It's a fight for adapting and getting in.
Yeah.
So, and both these teams are injured. It's kind of cool that they're just, even in this spot. Both these teams have been injured. It's kind of been roller coasters for both of them. Credit them for getting in. If you're a fan of both these teams, you get at least another chance, a game, or maybe possibly two or more. Taking a look at the Bulls, their season has been up and down. I don't think, it's really hard to gauge like the true measure of this team. They've had a lot of unfortunate injuries. Obviously, Patrick Williams, Zach LaVine going down. It's really been the DeMar DeRozan show. I love DeMar DeRozan. I love how he plays. I'm an old school guy. I like that kind of ball, but he's not really, or has never really been a true one, a number one, guy. He does have the ability to create his own shot and, get the foul line. And it has, kept the Bulls in, position that they are in. But it's going to be tough to see they can, mount all those injuries. Defensively, you have Alex Caruso, who's been kind of a big get for them from the Lakers. He can kind of, keep some of the perimeter play at check defensively for Atlanta, kind of disrupt things a little bit. I think he's kind of a wild card for the Bulls. I'm not usually a big fan of him. I usually don't give him a lot of props just because I never liked him much for the Lakers, but that's what he does.
Right.
And I think that could be a key spot that they use him in, is to kind of get under the skin of Trae Young.
No, and that's like kind of what you just said about Caruso. I feel like is the whole motto of this Bulls teams is it's guys that, and the same thing about DeMar. It's like guys that are good. They're good players. You like to watch them, but just the product, the sum has not been more than the sum of their parts. Unfortunately for this Bulls team over the last few years. But yeah, and as far as DeMar goes, I've never really understood the thought process of building the team around him. And I know they have LaVine too, who's been out, but I mean, I think he proved in Toronto they could never quite get over the hump with him as their number one guy. And now they're just trying the same thing when he's 6 years older, which he's playing like 34 minutes a game this year, which is a lot for a guy his age to be the number one guy doing that. But yeah, as middle of the road as these teams have been, I mean, they do have those stars. So I don't know why people wouldn't be interested in this game at all. Especially with what you mentioned about the Bulls almost knocking off the Heat last year. I mean, these games obviously matter. If the Bulls scored 2 more points last year, the Heat never make it into the playoffs, let alone the finals, which goes to show why I think people definitely are overlooking this game. But as far as prediction, I'm going to lean towards the Bulls just because of I feel like their experience, but also kind of the heart that they have with the guys like Caruso and DeRozan, and I feel like Kobe White and Dosunmu are the same way. With these guys being so many, these two teams being not too flashy, I feel like it's just going to come down to that: who wants it more and who's willing to put it on the line. And in that debate between these two, I'm going towards the Bulls.
I think I'm gonna lean with you as well. And it's the fact that they're at home too.
Yeah,
kind of plays into the factor. So I think the Bulls will walk away with a close win. I think all these games are going to be tight. I don't see any of these games really getting ugly or being a blowout most of the game. I think you're going to see some good basketball. And honestly, I mean, obviously, you tune into your average regular season game in the middle of the year. You don't get a lot of that intensity, but I mean, you kind of got a glimpse. If you watch the last, I would say 3 to 4 games, even like about the last week, the intensity does pick up, especially in those last regular season games. I mean, some of those games were really fun to watch, especially obviously the teams that are still fighting. So you're going to get a good matchup, I think, in all these 4 games between today and tomorrow. If you would have asked me about the NBA play-in when it first came out, I would have crapped all over it. I wouldn't have been a fan of it. I've come to enjoy it, though. I think it's a good format. I think Adam Silver did a good job with this one, and should be good. Should be good 2 days of basketball.
Yeah, well, that's like the kind of the same thing with the in-season tournament they started this year too. Everyone was extremely skeptical of it going in, and then if you actually watched the games, I mean, especially the semifinal and final, I mean, those were like, I mean, as close to as you can get to playoff intensity without actually being the playoffs, especially in like, what was it, November or December when they were doing that? I mean, that was awesome. So I'm excited. Yeah, because you're right. There's always that slump in the middle of the year. I feel like maybe the slump just with the in-season tournament, maybe the slump just changed from November to January, but I'm excited for this intensity with these games for sure.
So with that being said, we have our hypothetical matchups locked in. So let's take it to the streets. Let's go to now our full West and East Conference bracket with the 7 and 8 seeds decided in our hypothetical matchup. So let's go back to the Western Conference. It is, this is not, if you weren't a huge NBA follower and you looked at the standings for the playoffs, you looked at the playoff matchups, this is not a typo. The Thunder are, in fact, the 1 seed in the Western Conference this year. We're going to find out, really, does playoff experience matter? It doesn't matter, especially, the last couple of years. It's not just your regular 8 seed bum. Some of these teams are actually legit. I mean, you got, especially in the Western Conference.
Especially in the West,
yeah. I mean, so no matter who they play, and we have the Warriors locked in here, it's going to be especially tough for them. Obviously, they rode Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was in the MVP mix this year. And then you got guys kind of break out who a lot of people said Chet Holmgren was never going to be good. I've always been a Chet believer. And then obviously he got hurt right away. People are like, oh, see, I told you. What do you know? He comes back this year and looks like the rookie of the year. Jalen Williams also took a big step this year. Obviously, they're still very young, but the talent's there. And, we've known that the Thunder are going to be building for the future years ago, and they stockpiled all these picks. It's starting to come to fruition here. Now, if they play in the Warriors in a 7-game series, do you think they can win 4 games? It's going to be tough. What do you think?
It's definitely interesting to match up as far as experience. I mean, the Warriors, most of the guys, well, not most of the guys, some of those guys being on all 4 championship teams, and then the Thunder being the second youngest team in the NBA this year. Definitely interesting there. I think as long as it's all going to depend on if Shai can be Shai, which I am 100% confident in. He seems like he's got that mentality that no stage is too big for him. And then the other guys around him, both Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, Chet, even though they are small, I think that's where the matchup is good for them, because the Warriors are also a small team, so that's not something that'll get in their way. Being too small, not having the size. As far as Chet, I was definitely one of those guys hating on him coming out of college. My main team was the Thunder prior to having a friend that got picked by the Kings. But so when Rowan Coulter was with me during that draft, he'll be able to tell you the Thunder picked him, and I did not have a good reaction. And then he got hurt, and I was one of those people saying, I told you so. And then he came back this year, and everyone else got to say that to me. So I'm definitely happy about it, that I was very wrong about him.
Yeah, Chet's a good guy. He's a good guy to root for. And one good season, one bounce back season doesn't define his career. I think there's still a lot of concerned Thunder fans wondering if he could keep up, that style, like just with this frame and everything. That's like the biggest question always with him.
I mean, a lot of the big long guys though, they get drafted like 7 foot and taller. I mean, look at Giannis and how lanky he was when he came in. I mean, not saying he's going to get as big as Giannis, but he'll be able to put on some weight and bulk and adjust. But I think that's definitely, plus with all the draft capital they have moving forward, I mean, they could definitely go out and trade for a big guy if they need one and play him at the 4 or something like that.
They could do pretty much anything. I mean, with all the reserve picks they have right now in capital. But they're building a good thing. And, they came down the stretch, and the Nuggets kind of hiccuped a little bit, and the Timberwolves kind of hiccuped a little bit. Though both those teams had every opportunity to get the 1.
Right.
And it slid to the Thunder. And personally, as a Nuggets fan, I was happy for that. Obviously, it was a little embarrassing to lose to the Spurs. But personally, I don't want to face who I think it's going to be the Mavs. And even if it's not the Mavs, it'll be the Clippers in the 4-5 matchup. I don't want to face either of those teams, especially Dallas. So I'm kind of fine with sliding down to that, sliding down a spot and avoiding that 4 or 5 matchup as the one. Even if the Thunder get past, say it's the Warriors in the first round, I think there's going to be another very tough test for them. That's why I just don't see them getting to the conference finals. I don't think that's a knock on them. It just kind of reminds me of the Grizzlies. I think it was last year, 2 years ago, maybe when they were the 2 seed. Everyone
Right.
had a bunch of hype on them.
Yep.
I think it's gonna be the sign of the same fate here. If we are going hypothetical against the Warriors, I think they will win some games, especially having home court advantage. I think but it would be the Warriors in 7 games. Would be my prediction in the 1-8.
Really, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I think I'm leaning towards the Thunder right now, just because, as far as consistency, the Warriors have had a lot of turmoil this year, and I totally believe in Steph to be able to win those 1-game situations like the play-in, but I don't know if they're going to have the consistency over a 7-game series, just based on the last year and a half or 2 years maybe since the whole Draymond Jordan Poole incident. I just feel like it's been so up and down, where they lose themselves for a month and then find themselves for a month and they look like the Warriors again. Which over the last, I don't know, few weeks, they've won 8 out of the last 10, so they are playing well right now. But I just feel like the Thunder have been too consistent this year. And even though they are young and don't have all the experience that the Warriors do, I feel like their defense, especially on their consistency, especially on the defensive end, will stay true, especially when they're going on the road.
I hope you're right. I mean, I've never been a huge Warriors hater or anything, but I'm a little tired of it. It would be cool to see the Thunder prove, because no one's gonna believe in them, even if they are the 1 seed. I think everyone's gonna be kind of picking the Warriors. So it would be cool to kind of see them shed that and then win the series, whether it's in 7, whether it's in 4 or 5. I don't care. Even if they win in 7 and it takes everything they got, that'd be super cool for them to see, and it'd be good for them as a franchise moving forward. It would really just reaffirm about their vision and what they're trying to do. And they're onto something good. Regardless of what happens, they're onto something good. And I think a lot of Thunder fans are still probably in shock that they are the 1 seed. I know I am. I didn't expect that to happen at all. I knew they were going to get better, but I think they're ahead of schedule, and it's gonna see.
Oh yeah, they definitely are.
Take this year.
Yeah, and it's like, as far as their chances moving forward in a deep playoff run, teams don't. They missed the playoffs completely last year. They lost in the play-in. Teams don't go from missing the playoffs to conference finals. Usually, they usually gotta do some losing, and learn before they can do go all the way.
Right. Let's take a look at the 2-7 matchup, and we have, for this purposes, we have the Pelicans penciled in, which I do think, as a Nuggets fan, that makes it a little tougher. Like I said earlier, I don't like playing. I hate the Lakers, but I think they do. I think we do match up better with them. Personally, as a Nuggets fan, I think I will cheer for the Lakers to win. I think it's easier for us. You get that kind of rivalry again. It's the matchup of the Western Conference Finals from a couple of years ago. So I'm looking forward to that. And then this year, the Nuggets swept the Lakers this year. So if it is the Pelicans, it's going to be a little bit tougher. We talked a little bit about, when Zion and Ingram, play off each other, they kind of have, obviously, I would say a smaller effect, but it's kind of the same pick and roll style where the Nuggets are comfortable with running. They kind of all have all kinds of different sets that run off of that. They kind of have similar styles. I don't know. They match up better with us than I think the Lakers do. I still think the Nuggets should have enough to get by them, but it could take 6 games. It might not be a sweep. It might not be a gentleman's sweep. It could take 6 games. I think we get pushed from the Pelicans a little bit. And that might not be the worst thing in the world for us. But I do see us getting past New Orleans in this case.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised that I'm maybe a little more confident in the Nuggets than you are. I mean, not that New Orleans Pelicans are any schmucks or anything, but I don't think they're anywhere near the level of the Nuggets. I mean, even though the Nuggets missed out on the 1 seed, I think they've proven all year that winning a championship was definitely not a fluke, and they are not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, with you keep that core together, Jokic, Murray, Gordon. I mean, and just put shooters around them. I mean, that's and guys like Christian Brown and Peyton Watson have stepped up. You know, after they lost a couple rotation guys last year, I don't see any reason that there would be a significant drop off from last postseason to this postseason.
I would hope not. I don't see it happening either, especially with a guy like Jokic and playoff Murray. You forget about playoff Jamal Murray. He's a different beast. He's not regular season, so
he is.
Yes, and if you're gonna knock off Jokic, it's gonna take your best ball. And like I said, I think we'll get past them. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a sweep. When you add some, and I think they have a pretty solid bench too as well. Sometimes the Nuggets second unit can get a little dicey. Obviously, you mentioned Brown and Watson; they've stepped up at times, but they're still young. I think they've equaled the production that the bench guys from last year gave us, but those guys were veterans,
Right.
A little bit of experience. So that's the only thing. It's a little iffy. I do think that this Pelicans second unit can match up pretty well with ours. But again, no one on the court there is going to rival Nikola Jokic. So I feel confident in us avoiding a disastrous first round upset, whether it's New Orleans, whether it is the Lakers. But let's move on to the 3-6 matchup. This is going to be another rematch of a regular season finale, and this is between the Timberwolves, the 3 seed, and the Suns. The Timberwolves, kind of like the Nuggets, we're hoping they can get a 1 seed. They slide all the way down to the 3 spot. Now they have to face the Suns, who you do not want to face Kevin Durant. You do not want to face Devin Booker. You do not want to face Bradley Beal. And then with a bunch of role players and defensive players around them. So, I mean, obviously, this is kind of another case of a little bit of an inexperienced team towards the top this year. Yeah, they're talented. That's kind of the same question mark that the Thunder are going to get. Can they put it together? The Timberwolves haven't won a playoff series since 2004, just so you know.
Right. No, that's at least, I mean, with what they're building, with everything around Anthony Edwards now, I'm glad they've kind of come out of the middle of the road pack for the last 2 decades.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards is a different beast, dude. Like that guy is going to be something else.
Yeah, I think over the last year or two, everyone's like talking who's going to be the next face of the league when LeBron and Steph and KD are done. I think it's him in my mind. Like someone else is going to have to show me that it's not him. Like he's electric in terms of highlights. His production is insane, and he does it on both ends. I mean, I don't know what else you want from this guy.
He's everything the Timberwolves fans have been praying for years. Obviously, they've had some, big name guys. They've had Karl Anthony Towns for years now, but this guy is something different. That's like you said, this guy has potential to take over the league by storm, especially when you have, the past face of the leagues all in their kind of twilight years. I mean, we've really seen Chris Paul, even LeBron, KD's getting up there, like Curry, Thompson. These guys are, they're in their final stages. And, obviously you have guys like Jokic and Giannis and Luka. But, I mean, I would put Anthony Edwards up there. And he's a little bit younger than those guys. But if guys, I think he could even get to where those guys are, maybe then some. Like you said, he does it at both ends. He's a human highlight reel. I love everything about Anthony Edwards. So it would be cool to see them to get a playoff series win. It's going to be tough against the Suns. Do you think they can get it done?
This, to me, is the hardest series to predict in the West.
Yeah.
Because what we talked about the Wolves, they just haven't been there. So it's kind of no way to tell right now how they're going to respond to being in the playoff atmosphere. But also, I think the Suns have been so hard to predict and get a read on the entire season. Like, obviously, they have the talent with their top 3 guys. But I feel like at times this year, they've looked like a team that could miss the playoffs, or they've looked like a team that could make the conference finals. Like they're such a roller coaster. I've had no idea how to read them, but it's really hard to bet against a guy named Kevin Durant. So, given the lack of experience on the Wolves, and obviously Karl Anthony Towns not being there at the moment, I think I got to go with the Suns in this one, and at the moment I'm believing that Durant and Booker are going to be the guys we expect them to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Everything, like as a fan, as a person, wants to say that Timberwolves are going to win because I hate the Suns. I hate Kevin Durant. I
Yeah,
don't like them.
I'm a Thunder
Um,
fan. I really hate Kevin Durant.
it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to cheer for their. I like Bradley Beal, excluding Bradley Beal, but it's hard to cheer for the other big two of those big three. I don't like Booker. I don't like Kevin Durant. But I think they will win this game. It's obviously you have the knee injury with Karl Anthony Towns, and then the owner, like the Timberwolves ownership, is like fighting with each
The
other.
whole debacle there with
Right?
A-Rod.
Like that's not good. Like that's not what you like. That's not what you want going to the playoffs. Is any distractions, especially with the ownership, arguing with each other,
Mhm.
and then so the Timberwolves finished 56-26. 3 of those losses were to the Suns.
Yep.
All of those by double figures. They went 0-3.
Right.
They got blown out every time. It's not a good matchup. I don't know what, especially if they're downtowns. I don't know what they're going to do defensively against the Suns, who obviously can score it well with the big three, but then also have just like a smaller, quicker kind of lineup. It's going to be interesting to see how the Timberwolves can manage all that. I want them to win so badly, but I don't know if I can pick them.
Yeah, I think they're kind of in the same spot as OKC, where they're definitely building something and have a bright future, but there's kind of levels to it and steps to it you got to take, where you got to do a little bit of losing before you learn how to really make a deep run. Which, if I'm going into next year, if I'm Anthony Edwards, or if I'm facing Anthony Edwards after this is where like I think he really takes off, especially with the Olympics this summer too.
Yeah. I think it'd be a huge stepping stone. And that's kind of like how the Nuggets kind of built themselves. Was we finally got to the playoffs after kind of a drought, and then just kind of built and built and built, and eventually you get to where you want to go. It's not going to be immediate success. If you're a Timberwolves fan and you happen to go down in the first round, I don't think you should be super upset with that. I mean, last year, you barely are in the playoffs. Now you're, one of the top teams in the West. So, especially with the loss of one of your key players, I don't think you can be too upset if you happen to go down early this year. It's just all about building. Like you said, you're gonna have to lose a couple times to get where you want to go. It's not going to be a super sale. It's not going to be all clear sailing when you want to get to where you want to go to the top. So I think I'm going to lean with the Suns with you as well in that series, but it's going to be a fun one.
Oh yeah.
This next one, the 4-5 matchup, we talked a little bit about it. Clippers and the Mavericks. This is going to be just incredible. I mean, you go back to, I think it was 2021 when they went to 7 games in the first round. It's going to be kind of like that again. I'm getting that kind of same vibes. Obviously, I mean, you have Luka and Kawhi Leonard. Those guys are just instant watch TV. Even no matter who they're playing for, what time of the year. Like those are 2 guys I want to see play at any time.
For sure.
And then obviously the secondary stars behind them are equally as talented almost. Kyrie Irving, who's playing lights out. I mean, he's having like kind of a career rebirth this year.
He is.
It's fun. It's been fun to watch him play. I've always been a Kyrie guy, and I'm glad he's picking things back up. And then obviously Paul George and James Harden are just as equally much see TV. So you have Kawhi Leonard. He's a 2-time champ. You have key players on both teams who have gone on big playoff runs. It's going to be a tough one to pick, but I'm really impressed with the Mavericks are starting to do. I think they've won like 9 out of the last 10 or 8 of the last 10, something like that. And honestly, I'm looking long term in the West. Looking around, call me crazy, but I think the Nuggets' biggest threat is Dallas right now to come out of the West.
Okay. No, I mean, I'm with you as far as how they've been playing as of late. especially since those moves they made at the deadline for Gafford and Washington. I mean, I remember watching the first game after the deadline when those two came over, and it looked like a completely different team. I mean, before it was, I mean, obviously Luka's always going to be a ball dominant guy, but it felt like their offense was actually more well distributed, and they actually defended, which was a reason prior to that why I had a hard time watching them at times, just because it was um, whoever gets to 135 first wins. But no, they're. I feel like since the trade deadline, they've actually been a very complete team. And I mean, as far as them being the biggest threat to Denver, I think these two teams in this series are probably the two biggest threats to Denver, whichever one comes out.
Yeah. And that's why I did not want to get that 1 seed. I was kind of fine with us slipping down a little bit, push the potential matchup between them as far back as possible. And even if it is the Thunder, the 1 seed who, should get past the 4 or 5 in the second round, push them back as far as possible too. I'm fine with the Timberwolves. I'm fine with the Suns. We beat them both last year, So
that's true. Yeah, you kind of let everyone take each other out before they have to get to you.
Right. Let's turn our attention to the East Conference here quick before 6:30 comes around. Now the 1-8 matchup here. Do we need to discuss this one a bunch? Okay.
This is going to be the biggest landslide.
Right, and it's kind of funny, the West Conference. Like you kind of have to look at some of these matchups here, and then the East side it's a little bit more chalky, especially with the 1-8. So let's kind of skip over the Celtics in that one handily. The 2, I still think especially with the injury to Julius Randle, it's a little bit more of a question mark. But I still think the Knicks as a 2 seed this year, they're onto something, even without Julius Randle. They have Jalen Brunson, who's turned into everything they wanted him to be. Obviously things are working out for Dallas right now. But I still go back to that, and it's a head scratching move. Things are, like I said, things are working out, but you kind of wonder what could have been. I'm a big Brunson guy, and he's turned the Knicks around. Obviously, they still have to, until they do anything noteworthy, they're still going to be the Knicks of old. But this is the best team I think I might have ever seen a New York Knicks team on paper. So.
I think in our lifetimes, I think this is probably the best Knicks team that we've seen. But yeah, like you said, even with Randall out, they're still so deep, and every single guy, especially on a Tom Thibodeau team, every single guy that gets in there, they're going to leave it all out there on both ends of the floor, which when you have home court advantage in a 2-7 matchup, I think kind of, I mean, even though you're already probably more talented than the other team in a 2-7 matchup, I think that kind of just seals the deal in that scenario. Plus, with Randall out, I mean, I like Randall, and I think he gets kind of more judgment than maybe is deserved, but I think their offense may flow a little bit better with him not playing alongside Brunson.
That's true. I mean, a lot of people might be skeptical about Coach Tibbs' playoff past, but especially going up against Spoelstra, if it's the 7 seed, like we have them matched up against. But I think this is a different Knicks bunch, and I do think they're going to win this series. I don't think it's going to take 7 games. I think they can do it in 5 or 6.
No, yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Moving on, we have the Knicks winning that one. This one, potentially, the 3-6 matchup, I'll let you go first on this one. I think there's a potential upset here, but I want to hear what you have to say about the Bucks and Pacers.
I really, just because of Giannis's health question marks, I really like the Pacers, plus just the record against them this season. They've had the Bucks number all year. And I mean, most of those games were prior to them getting Pascal Siakam, which I think even if he's not like a superstar, he is now like really the only guy on that roster with playoff experience and playoff success, which for young guys like Turner and Halliburton, I mean, even just having a vet like that on the roster is going to make you play so much better, I feel like. So I actually like the Pacers in this one, especially just the Bucks with Giannis's health, and him and Dame just have not meshed this year, and they're kind of just limping into the playoffs. I like the Pacers in this one.
All right, I do as well too. I didn't know if you're going to go a different route, so I'm glad we're on the same page here. For me, it's just two words: Doc Rivers. It's just, and I understand the players might have not liked the last guy, but the proof was in the pudding. They were a good team. They were doing good things. They fired him. They bring in Doc, who has, I mean, yeah, he won the NBA title with the Celtics in 08.
That was 15 years ago.
He hasn't shown he's capable of even getting to the finals since then.
I remember, was it, because that was right around the trade deadline. I was like, I was texting you, and I'm like, I was like, okay, they got Pat Bev. That's a nice pickup for their bench, and they needed a defensive guard. And then I'm like, oh, never mind. They got Doc.
Yeah. And since then, I think they've had a losing record since he's got there, where it hasn't been good.
No.
And it hasn't like they were at the start of the year. So it's a bizarre move. I get, there was rumblings of the players didn't like him. The ownership didn't like him.
Yeah.
He's winning games. I know it's the first half of the regular season, but my gosh, since then it's not looked good. When you have guys like you mentioned, Siakam, who has playoff experience, and then you add like some of the young rising stars like Tyrese Halliburton, who you mentioned the Olympics this coming year. He got selected to the Olympic team like that. This guy's a legit guy.
Exactly.
It's not the Pacers of old that we're used to, which is like, they're good, but they're not a threat. I really like where this team is headed to as well, in terms of the future. And I like Rick Carlisle. I would say that Rick Carlisle is a better coach than Doc Rivers. I would take
easily.
Easily. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Pacers is the pick here. I'm glad we're on the same page there. Obviously, you're still going against Dame Lillard. You're still going up against Giannis. I mean, that's not for the faint of heart. But I like the Pacers in this one.
Yeah.
And then real quick, our last matchup in the East here, we have an intriguing matchup: Cleveland and Orlando. This, you might not think this is going to be a intriguing matchup in terms of who the two teams are, but these are fun teams to watch if you paid attention to them, especially the Cavs. I've liked watching the Cavs play the last 2 years or so. They split the season series with each other this year. Neither team has a ton of true playoff experience. I mean, I guess you do have Joe Ingles, maybe, but a bunch of young guys, and it's kind of a question mark. Which of these younger teams are going to show up? The Cavs have played kind of better. I mean, once Mobley went down, I was kind of confused about them, but they've kind of played better without him. So I think I'm going to lean Cleveland in this one. It's going to be like an old 90s matchup. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. I am leaning towards Orlando. I think I just have that horrible taste in my mouth of how Cleveland performed in the playoffs last year when they got the gentleman's sweep from the Knicks, and it was either 0 or 1 time in 5 games where they even scored 100 points. Yeah. Garland didn't show up. Mobley didn't show up. Donovan Mitchell shockingly wasn't himself. Maybe I'm holding too much weight from a year ago. Maybe they've changed, and they did add some new guys, like Strus and Niang, and rotation guys. I mean, not any new stars, but definitely guys that would help them in the postseason. But I just don't trust them yet. They're gonna have to prove it to me before I trust them.
I totally get it, and weirdly, like when I'm on Twitter, for some reason I have like. For some reason, I follow a bunch of like Cleveland sports accounts randomly over the years. So I've always kind of been able to keep up with Cleveland sports. And the Cavs this year, they were going for the 3 seed, like a week or so ago. They were like kind of like locked into the 3 seed. And yeah, maybe your first round draw is maybe a little bit tougher. You could argue playing the Pacers if they were the 3 and they played the 6. But now with the 4 or 5, you got to play Boston in the second round. Like.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you have any hope of at least going to the conference finals? Like they kind of blew themselves. They kind of screwed themselves there down the stretch these last couple of games. So even if you're a little more excited about your first round matchup, you don't have to play Indiana. You still have to play Boston next round. So I get it. They choked last year and looked awful, and a series that they probably should have won. And then,
Yeah, I mean, on
so again,
paper, going into that series last year, I mean, I definitely thought they were going to win that on paper, but I was
no one was
baffled.
taking the Knicks. Yeah, nobody was
I,
taking the Knicks last year.
I was baffled. Not just that they lost; it was how they lost. I
How?
mean, that was. I mean, obviously, there's going to be bad series between like a 1-8, but that was that was a 4-5, and how badly they got beat down. It was shocking.
Right. And that's still going to be. I think it's going to be kind of in the back of their minds. I could definitely see that. I can definitely see that trend continuing where they kind of blew it last year. They blew it down the stretch in terms of getting the 3 seed. Maybe they do slip one up, and the Magic get a playoff series win, which would be incredible. Because I don't remember the
And
last time they won a series.
oh, that's been a while, but those in Orlando though, it's one of my favorite young duos or up and coming duos is Ben Carroll and Franz, who I think people had questions maybe when they got put together because they're kind of both big downhill attacking wings and forwards. But I think they mesh great together, and I mean they're obviously both so young. They're just going to get better from here.
Absolutely. Look, I think all of these playoff series are going to be intriguing in their own ways. Maybe outside of Boston and whoever that 8 seed ends up being, but the rest should be all pretty good. And hey, it's good to have the guy who knows it the most, Max Smith Drahos, joining me tonight. You great insight. We agreed to pretty much just about all of the series. Maybe we disagreed on a couple of them, but it all starts tonight with the 2 play-in games. First game is going to tip off here in about 7-8 minutes, so we will wrap up here quick and let you get to that one. Western Conference playing tonight and the Eastern Conference playing tomorrow. Then you have both the play-in championship games for that 8 seed, and then the playoffs are here. It's going to be here before we know it, and we'll be back. We'll get Sheets back on here too. I know he's a busy work week for him, he said, so we'll get him back on here, and we'll keep running this back.
He's on sabbatical from the pod.
He is. He deserved it too. He deserved it week off. So. Thanks, Max, for joining us tonight. Like I said, we'll keep up to date with all the playoff talk here over the course of not the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. We'll keep you updated on everything as we bring this baby into June. It's a good time of the year if you're a basketball fan. Thanks for joining us tonight. The podcast will get uploaded to Spotify tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and go watch the play-in games.